Okay, so now you bring up a whole different thought pattern in terms of the question. And for those who might have just joined us, the question that has been asked is, does Yeshua have the authority to change the Sinai Covenant? Now, here's the thing: is that God is non-contradictory, and
Right.
Terry in the chat room says God does not change. This is a really interesting concept. The fourth century Trinitarian debates brought up the idea of does God change, and this is one of the reasons that they came to the conclusion. It was one of the first debate top points that they had on whether or not the Father had always had a son. And the answer is no,
Well,
God does not change, and therefore he's always been Father. Okay, with that said, does God's holiness change? So, for instance, and this is a question I like to ask people every once in a while, if God finds something detestable, that is, it is an abomination. He calls it an abomination. Now, that means it's detestable in his sight. It goes contrary to his holiness somehow. So, for instance, the kosher laws are seen as detestable. Now, there's multiple points that need to be spoken of here. And we'll get to the Sabbath in a few seconds. But when it comes to the kosher laws, you have throughout all your generations. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, if God says throughout all your generations, can Yeshua come, who is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in the flesh, come and say, no, it's not throughout all your generations. It's only through some of your generations. So that's the first question. The second question that I'd have to ask is, if it is detestable in the sight of God to do something like eat shellfish, and then Yeshua comes, does God's holiness change where all of a sudden his holiness is not offended by the fact that people eat shellfish? Well, if God doesn't change, then how does his holiness change? He says, be holy for I am holy. So to say that Yeshua would come and say, so Mark 7 is going to be the place where everyone goes, right? Thus, Jesus declared all foods clean. Well, we've talked numerous times on this show about the variant there, and the Greek language there. There's a reason that the KJV translated it, thus purging all foods, instead of thus Jesus declared all foods clean. You can read, if you know any Greek at all, you can read the article that we have on Torah Resource written by my father. But the point is that if God doesn't change, and keep in mind, I think that it's very important. I'll throw this back to you in just a second. I know I've been talking for a long time, but keep in mind that one of the main tenets of Yeshua's deity in the 4th century arguments rests upon the idea that God, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, does not change. And now with the Christian church as a whole, not everyone within the Christian church, but as a general rule, what the modern Christian church says today is, no, God's holiness changed. So which one is it? Do we rest the Trinitarian doctrine on the fact that God does not change, and then say that he does change when it comes to holiness? Or are we consistent across the board and say that God simply does not change, and therefore his holiness does not change? Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button, and check out more videos from Messiah Matters.